Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 21 of my Joseph Losey season. Today we're going to talk about the 1971 Palme D'Or winner, The Go-Between, starring Alan Bates and Julie Christie and Edward Fox and Michael Redgrave and Dominic Guard. This is the Studio Canal Vintage Classics Blu-ray. And it's a beautiful film. As I said, this is another Pinter Losey collaboration. This was the film that Losey wanted to do before he did Figures in a Landscape, but for one reason or another he had to wait until afterwards. This is a film that he eventually got some recognition. I mean, you don't win the Palme D'Or for nothing. It is, I consider it a horror film. It's about class, as quite a lot of Losey films are. It's about the rich and their relationship with the working class or the poor. Dominic Guard plays a 12-year-old boy on the cusp of his 13th year, and he has been taken in by this rich family. He knows he's friendly with the son, and he spends the summer with this family. And the young woman, Marion, played by Julie Christie, who is being kind of courted by Edward Fox, who has a wonderful scar on his face, because as somebody says, he was gored by the boars. But she has a bit on the side with Alan Bates, who is Farmer Ted, not Father Ted. And Dominic Guard essentially becomes the go-between of their arrangements and little letters between the two of them. And he just pretty much gets used. And it's another example of a film where a child is in the world of adults and doesn't really understand what's going on. He does want Alan Bates to explain what a lover does and what's more than spooning. It's, again, it's a not so subtle attack on, you know, the rich and the idle, who are only really used to straw boaters and cricket, and that's what their world is. Michael Gough, who even looked in his 50s when he was in his 20s, is kind of the patriarch of the family. Julie Christie is wonderful as the object of everybody's affection, pretty much, but it is very hard to root for her, because we do see her nasty side when at one point the boy refuses to take a letter, and she turns on him quite quickly, because the boy is just kind of seen as a toy or a plaything or something to amuse them. You know, Julie Christie goes into town with them to buy him new clothes, which turns out to be this green suit, this Lincoln green suit, and his little friend calls him like Robin Hood, who obviously stole from the rich to give to the poor, which is not necessarily a metaphor for his taking letters between Christie and Bates. The two kind of younger toffs are pure toffs, the definition of just the idle rich who look down on the poor or the working people of the land. And they are kind of almost caricatures with the way they speak. Edward Fox is quite wonderful. He's much more refined as he eventually gets engaged to Julie Christie. The film itself, it starts with, the opening titles start with rain on a pane of glass. It ends in the rain, but you have this summer of greens and yellows and obviously cricket whites. The film itself, it starts with a voiceover that we understand is the older Leo, character played by Dominic Guard, and later as an older man played by Michael Redgrave, who gives one of his Hollow Man performances as he talks with the older Julie Christie about what happened during that summer. The music is by Michel Legrand, who did scores for Jacques Demy and Godard, and Orson Welles, and Louis Malle, and he also did a Bond score. And it is very melancholy. It does remind one of Days Gone By. The opening line of the voiceover is pretty much "the past is like a foreign country." It was based on a novel, and Pinter adds his own style of writing. I think it's maybe, I might even be controversial and say that I perhaps slightly prefer this to The Servant. I know that's sacrilege, but I do love kind of films that do just show off or talk about the rich just using the poor, pretty much. Even after the cricket match, and both, they're mixing essentially the people of the land with the rich folk. They're even sitting next to each other. It's incredible. They ask for singers, but of course it's Leo and Ted that sing the songs, again for the amusement of the landowners, if you like. And Julie Christie plays the piano. There's lots of wonderful little looks between Bates and Christie. Alan Bates is wonderful in this. He's kind of not necessarily forgotten, but when you have kind of Oliver Reed and Albert Finney and Peter O'Toole and that whole Peter Finch, that whole kind of generation that grew up together and were almost in the same acting class, which just seems amazing. But Alan Bates is absolutely wonderful in this. But again, it's really about Leo, Dominic Guard's character, learning not necessarily the truth about adult life, but certainly having his eyes open to the adult world, and his life essentially not necessarily been ruined, but certainly by Michael Redgrave's performance at the end of the film as the older Leo, certainly damaged somewhat by his eyes being opened by the behaviour of Christie especially, and Bates. So it's not like in the sense of The Age of Innocence, where you feel for Daniel Day-Lewis's character, you feel for Michelle Pfeiffer's character. In this one, there's an inevitability about the fact that Alan Bates and Julie Christie can never certainly marry. But you don't actually feel that bad for Julie Christie, because again we do see her dark side. We do see Alan Bates' dark side a little bit, but it is understandable. And you know, the end of the film, again, it is a realistic ending, and again with Legrand's score there is a melancholy and a kind of tragic feel to the story. I would recommend picking up the Go-Between on this edition. There's a new interview with Dominic Guard, there's local news interviews with Julie Christie and Joseph Losey from 1970, and it's behind the scenes, there's an original trailer. There's an interview with Josh Losey, there's an interview with Patricia Losey, there's a piece with Michael Billington on Harold Pinter, there's an interview with Jerry Fisher who shot the film, and there's an interview with John Heyman who produced the film. You also get a nice booklet and some art cards. It's a film that, if it doesn't already have a 4K, I'm not sure it does, but it could probably do with a 4K. Again, it has, you know, there's lots of shots of the English countryside that remind you of the English landscape painters. But again, it is, I don't think it's by accident that it starts and finishes in the rain, despite all the sunshine for most of the duration of the film. Sunshine doesn't always tell the full story. So that's The Go-Between. It's one of my favourite Losey films, and as I said, it's one of the films that actually he did get some satisfaction, even though in typical Losey fashion he did complain that it wasn't pushed at the Oscars as much as it should have been. Again, he kind of blamed the distribution and the production company for not really marketing it properly, and it not being as successful as it perhaps could have been. As I say, it did win the Palme D'Or after all. So thanks very much for watching episode 21 of the Losey season. I mean, I did say after the Chabrol season and the Saget Race season I wouldn't be doing long seasons for directors, but here we are, it's episode 21, and I think I've still got 7 films to go. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know below what you think of The Go-Between and where it would rank in your favourite Losey films, and hopefully you'll join me again for episode 22, because we're now going into 4 films in a row that I haven't seen before. I think this is the second or third time that I've watched The Go-Between, but we're now coming up to 4 films in a row that I haven't seen, so that should be interesting. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.